Most of our dissatisfaction comes from not being ourselves, not knowing who we are, not knowing our being or true nature, not being free to be ourselves. That's where most of our problems come from. And he's not the only one to say so. The doctor was a Hungarian-Canadian, like myself, who did the research on stress. His name was Janos Selye. He said that the biggest stress is trying to be somebody other than who we are. And how does that even happen? How does that even happen? Or once it happens, how do we get back to ourselves?
Recent research studies show that it is an overgeneralization to claim that individuals with Asperger's syndrome have a deficit in empathy. Rogers and colleagues 2006 administered the Interpersonal Reactivity Index, IRI, a multidimensional measure for empathy, and the Strange Stories test to 21 adults with Asperger's syndrome and 21 matched controls. Their data show that, while the AS group scored lower on cognitive empathy and theory of mind, they were no different from the controls on an affective empathy scale of the IRA, empathic concern, and scored higher than the controls on the personal distress test. Some autistic individuals argue that there are different types of empathy: sensory empathy, emotional affective empathy, and intellectual empathy. So-called normal people have emotional empathy, but some of them may be very deficient in or lack sensory-based empathy, quite common in many autistic people. Donna Williams, 1998, page 117, describes sensory-based, not mental empathy, as working through resonance in a relationship between sender and receiver, in which the receiver loses their own separateness in merging with the sender as part of the mechanism of acquaintance before returning to the unmerged state of its own entity. Jor has introduced the concept of emotional energy that, just like other forms of energy, can be stored, focused, drained, or liberated. It can radiate out to others, for better or for ill. It can be vividly felt or left to work its own way in our bodies and nervous systems. And like other forms of energy, it can be felt by some while being invisible to others. Energy produced by the brain and the heart extends outside the body. So despite having difficulties identifying conventional emotional cues that are easily read by so-called normal people, some individuals with autism are very hypersensitive to the emotions of others. Some resonate with emotional states of their significant others and experience the same emotion inside themselves. Many resonate with animals. For example, Temple Grandin feels sensory empathy with cattle. When they remain calm, she feels calm, and when they are in pain, she feels their pain. I tune into what the actual sensations are like to cattle, rather than having the idea of death rile up my emotions. Grandin 206, page 94. Many autistic people can easily pick up the emotional energy of others and may be very distressed by the emotional behavior of those around them, even though they cannot interpret the feelings. Often those who take care of autistic children trigger by their emotional state, what we call challenging behaviors, and then are puzzled as to what caused the outburst or meltdown. Many autistic individuals seem to automatically tune into the mood of their carers and instantly share their emotions. These hypersensitive individuals seem to amplify their carers' emotions and feed them back. So if the emotions are negative, difficult behaviors emerge, which in fact are caused by the negative emotional energy that has been fed to the children by those around them. Research has shown that experiences of feeling someone else's pain are in fact very real for some people and reflected in the activity not only in the emotional centers of the brain, common for the majority of people, but also in a greater activity in somatic brain regions, providing the evidence that some people can experience both emotional and sensory components of pain while observing others suffering, resulting in a shared pain experience. Emotional intelligence, thinking with the heart. This is the one I identify and resonate most with. I always felt that sensing with your heart in the middle of your chest is a real thing. And there is indeed a connection between gut brain, heart brain, one everybody is focused on. Even science is catching up with that. Dr. Andrew Armour of the UCLA Neurocardiology Research Center discovered a sophisticated collection of neurons in the heart that organized into a small complex nervous system. The heart's nervous system contains around 40,000 neurons, called sensory neurites, that communicate with the brain. Many years of research tell us that the single most important ingredient in effective therapy, regardless of the paradigm, is the empathic capacity of the therapist. And I just noticed this image, actually it should show heart-to-heart connection, or right brain to right brain. And that's all connected, heart and right brain is connected. Right hemisphere processing is holistic and non-linear, taking everything in at once, in a receptive way. Working with the right hemisphere is the bedrock of healing in therapy. The term emotional intelligence, EI, was coined by Goleman in 1995 to refer to a person's ability to understand and accurately interpret his or her own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. The concept is intended to complement the traditional view of intelligence by aiming at the emotional, personal, and social aspects of intelligent behavior. This is known as the mixed model of EI, Barr on 1997, Goleman 1995, because EI is seen as a mixture of abilities, personality, dispositions, and traits. Meyer and Salovey in 1997 have developed the concept of EI further, the ability model, approaching it as thinking with a heart, distinguishing EI from distinct personality characteristics, while recognizing that they are important elements of EI. Emotional intelligence refers to an ability to recognize the meanings of emotions and their relationships, and to reason and problem solve on the basis of them. Emotional intelligence is involved in the capacity to perceive emotions, assimilate emotion-related feelings, understand the information of those emotions, and manage them. Perceiving emotions. The ability to perceive emotions in oneself and others, as well as in objects, art, stories, music, and other stimuli facilitating thought. The ability to generate, use, and feel emotion as necessary to communicate feelings or employ them in other cognitive processes, understanding emotions. The ability to understand emotional information, to understand how emotions combine and progress through relationship transitions, and to appreciate such emotional meanings, managing emotions. The ability to be open to feelings and to modulate them in oneself and others, so as to promote personal understanding and growth. Autistic individuals seem to retain this childlike curiosity and openness to the world, which is a right hemisphere state. In contrast, so-called normal people typically lose the ability to wonder, which is a left hemisphere state. Though having become cool, these people are missing what could be a very full life. We are often blind to autistic spirituality because it is not projected to our culturally constructed reality. So these experiences might go unnoticed by the majority of people. Besides, not every person with autism displays these sensitivities. However, it is reasonable to expect that it is more common in the autistic population than in so-called normal people, due to their differences in sensory, perceptual, and cognitive functioning. Contrary to the traditional view that autistic people experience difficulty or inability in understanding spiritual and religious notions due to their differences in sensory, perceptual, cognitive, and linguistic development, religious and spiritual experiences seem to come more easily to individuals with autism. Some develop spiritual giftedness, and what Stillman in 2006 calls the God connection. One of the first books to deal with spirituality and autism, Spirituality and the Autism Spectrum, of Falling Sparrows, 2001. Abe Isanon defines spirituality as the spirit with which we confront concrete reality, and to accommodate the special character of the autism condition, specifies that the spirituality of autism and related conditions is, in essence, a liberatory spirituality, a spirituality that seeks to give meaning not only to the life of the person with autism, but also to that of the carer. A central theme of the spirituality of liberation is living with spirit, or, as Sobrino in 1993 puts it, it is a being human with spirit, responding to crisis and bringing promise to concrete reality. Researching spirituality in autism, Bill Stillman, an adult with Asperger syndrome, 206, page 73, comes to a similar conclusion that children and animals, being the purest of innocence, often perceive, spiritual experiences only because they haven't yet been conditioned not to. The person with autism may simply not be fully cognizant of her very special gift, and may assume everyone communicates this way. In his 3 books devoted to spirituality and autism, Stillman provides numerous anecdotes illustrating such features of autistic spiritual connection or giftedness as the heightened awareness, innate gentleness, and exquisite sensitivity, a capacity to perceive all things seen and unseen, which again is a right hemisphere state. For some, these blessings came in the form of gifts of the Spirit. I learned eventually to lose myself in anything I desired. The patterns on the wallpaper or the carpet, the sound of something over and over again, the repetitive hollow sound I'd get from tapping my chin. Even people, with their conversations, became no problem. I could look through them until I wasn't there, and then later felt that I had lost myself in them. Williams, 1999. So this is that state of merging and unfocusing, zooming out of your ego, persona, personality, identity, and becoming one with the environment. Open focus of the right hemisphere perception Ian McGilchrist describes. With the left hemisphere we zoom in and see the details, but in that process we filter out so much and lose it in the process, so that information is not coming in when we are in a left hemisphere state. And when we shift our way of attending, as Ian McGilchrist describes, then suddenly we may notice a lot more what's going on in the environment. Spiritual intelligence. Recently, some researchers have argued in favor of another domain of intelligence, similar to rational intelligence and emotional intelligence. Spiritual intelligence, or thinking with a soul. Zohar and Marshall state that among other intelligences, rational and emotional intelligences, spiritual intelligence is the highest, as it unifies, integrates, and complements both IQ and EQ, serving as a foundation for effective functioning of both IQ mental and EQ emotional. Robert Emmons, drawing on Gardner's multiple intelligences, defines SI as the degree to which a person has mental and emotional properties that enable the person to see a guiding purpose, mid- and short-term tasks that are connected to the higher purpose, and maintain behaviors to fulfill them. Emmons suggests that there are at least 5 core abilities enabling people to solve problems and attain goals in their everyday life that define SI. The capacity to transcend the physical and material, the ability to enter into heightened states of consciousness, the ability to invest in everyday activities and relationships with a sense of the sacred, i.e., the ability to sanctify everyday experience, the ability to utilize spiritual resources to solve problems in living, the capacity to engage in virtuous behaviors or be virtuous, to show forgiveness, to be humble, to express gratitude, to show compassion. 7 factors of SI. Divinity, mindfulness, alternative or integrative health practices, extrasensory perception, community, intellectuality, a desire to study and discuss spiritual material and/or sacred texts, trauma and childhood spirituality. More definitions of spiritual intelligence are in Zohar and Marshall. SQ is an internal innate ability of the human brain and psyche, drawing its deepest resources from the heart of the universe itself. Spiritual intelligence is the soul's intelligence, with which we heal ourselves, and with which we make ourselves whole.